Don't you wish you could do that on a drum?
I wish I could do anything musically.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. The drummers back then didn't have any weapons, right?
No, like the drummer boys now.
Why would they do that?
Why would they be drummer boys? It's because you can't hear over the din of battle people yelling commands, so they'd use trumpets, bugles, and drums.
Oh,
so
for
drum
orders.
beats, yeah, you could advance and retreat.
Nice. Oh, I never got that far. Oh. Speaking of courage.
That's pretty loud, too.
Yeah, that was loud. Blowing my ears.
There you go.
What's going on, man?
Not much, man. Just back for another one.
Back for another one?
Yep, dealing with the cold.
Yeah, you said that we looked too skinny last time?
Yeah, I was not happy, so I quit my diet promptly.
Oh, you're done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Dunsky, huh?
Dunsky, yeah.
I'm still going, dude.
I looked like the guy from Into the Wild, man.
You really did.
That was a little rough.
Send me a picture of you and then the end of the... Is that the End of the Wild guy?
Yeah.
That was funny, man. Mm-hmm. So what do we got today?
Sammy Davis.
My favorite.
Yeah, this is not rare, but this is... Donnie and I have talked in the past a lot about some of our favorites, and I've, hey, check this video, check that one out. Donnie's pretty familiar with this one. This has always been one that he's liked, so...
I just like, if you guys look up, anywhere on YouTube, look up Sammy Davis, and there's a great, Medal of Honor series that they do, and he's actually telling the story, and he's just a great storyteller.
And that was one of the reasons I was hesitant to do this one, because, he's still alive, and he tells his own story so well. I didn't
you look at it
take
like it's disrespectful.
I kind of thought of it as disrespectful. The way I'm rationalizing in my head, I guess, is if we can do the show and that'll draw more people to him, to hearing him speak, then I'm okay with it. I just don't want to try to...
Make sure you do that, though. Go check out the Sammy Davis stuff, because his story, through his own words, is amazing.
It's just the way he tells it. He's such a genuinely good person.
Yeah,
too, so it's a good one.
I love the story about his sergeant. You'll find it. Just look it up.
Yeah.
So, where are we headed?
Cool. So Sammy Davis, as we talked about, this is going to be the Vietnam War. 1967, 1968 is when he was over there. So this is going to be that generation of baby boomers that are born after, people came home from World War II and what have you. Sammy Davis was born in Dayton, Ohio in November of 1946. His dad was in the Army Air Corps, which is where he met his mom. So they moved around a little bit. Just like a lot of those guys, he... Child of the Midwest, kind of a good childhood. Grew up hunting, fishing, playing with his older brothers, etc. He had two older brothers. One of them was 10 years older than him. One was 7 years older than him, so a good distance away. Then he had two little sisters, and then he had a younger brother that was 10 years younger than him.
Is the 7-year difference still where you're getting beat down by your older brothers, you think?
No, the way he described it was more like he was tagging along, and they were kind of showing him the ropes.
I wonder what that age gap is, where you're not like the bully older brother.
It depends on the family, I suppose. I think
it's probably like probably the 4 years is the cutoff.
5 years or so.
Yeah.
It just depends, I guess.
Yeah.
But more of that protector. And when they're that much older than him, and that's kind of the things that he talks about growing up in Illinois, and they moved around a lot because of his dad's job. So every 6 months he'd be moving. But it was always that outdoor lifestyle, like I said, the hunting, the fishing. And he always remembers with his older brothers, they're a bit older, so they want to go swimming and stuff, and he doesn't know how to swim, but his parents were always saying, don't forget your baby brother, don't leave your little brother, don't leave your little brother. So they would bring him along, and they would help him and teach him things, and hey, Sammy, sit on the banks while we go swim. One day when he was a youth, he said, I'm ready to go swimming. They said, are you sure? And he goes, yeah, teach me how to swim. So they said, okay. So they just picked him up and threw him in the river.
Oh, shit.
Started yelling, kick your legs, kick your arms, you know, that Midwest
Sink or
lifestyle.
swim, literally.
Exactly. Sink or swim, get it. And he got it, And then when he got a little older, he's got that younger brother that's 10 years younger than him. So he's same thing. He's going out and playing. He's kind of playing with his sisters and stuff, but, they're girls. So it's mom's telling him, don't forget your brother, don't leave your brother. So he's bringing his brother, and he's showing him the same things he learned, the hunting, the fishing, the shooting, the trapping, living outdoors, living in forts and all that kind of good stuff.
Good upbringing then.
Yeah, real good upbringing. Good family.
Middle class?
Yeah, middle class.
Yeah.
Middle class, but rural, more of that fun. Like his dad worked in the oil fields, and then he lost his job, so he started working in construction. They lived in Texas, Louisiana, Indiana,
all over
Iowa, Illinois, California.
Right.
So moving back and forth.
And his dad was in the military?
His dad was in the Army Air Corps in World War II.
Okay.
He didn't deploy, but he was in the Army Air Corps. His grandpa on the one side had fought in World War I, experienced the hell of the trenches and the gas and seeing the effects. His grandpa on the other side actually fought in the Spanish-American War and was wounded on with the Rough, or not with the Rough Riders, but up that charge on San Juan Hill. So
that's awesome. A lot
big
of history.
military background. His earliest memory of Christmas was his uncle was in the Marine Corps in the Korean War, just being there in his uniform and stuff.
Yeah.
So he kind of grew up looking up to the military and seeing that kind of thing.
So that's what motivated him?
Yeah, that's going to be the background in his life. And it's not even, this is the thing, at the time it wasn't a rarity. Most of these guys that fought in Vietnam, their fathers fought in World War II, or somebody fought in World War II. Because when we talk about that greatest generation where everybody is in the military, everybody's doing their part, those are the parents to these kids that fought in that Vietnam generation.
So it just kind of
right. So they're seeing all of that, and they're looking up to that, and that's just also normalizes that it's just part of life. That's what you do. You grow up, you go in the military, especially if your country needs you. If there's a war, that's where you need to be.
Right.
So that's
puts the importance on it too.
Exactly.
So when shit's popping off, you got to go.
Right. It's that sense of responsibility and that sense of duty. And with that, his mom and his dad, they raised them to be, self-sufficient and to be tough and everything. That's just that Midwest lifestyle. And then that's even just that time, that's the same age as my dad was born in 1948. And that's kind of that, just do it yourself, fix it. If you get hurt, too bad, suck it up. That's where he came from.
How old is he at this point?
Throughout his childhood, he joins the Army around 18 or 19, but moving around, they end up moving to California in junior high. He's up in Northern California, up near Stockton and everything like that. Spent his youth on the farms, though. One of his biggest life lessons, which you'll hear him say a lot in the videos, you remember his family mantra or his quote that he always says, you don't lose until you quit trying.
Oh, that's cool.
Always his thing. When he was 10 years old, he was a calf had got out, 500-pound calf,
Yeah.
And his mom was just sitting there watching him. He's got a rope around its neck, and he's trying to drag it back into the stall. And again, picture your 10-year-old
right.
trying to drag this calf. So every time he's trying to pull it and the calf wants to go, the calf just drags him the other direction.
Yeah.
And he can't figure it out.
Is that your mic?
Yeah, I got a little static here. All right, let's see. All right, there we go. Good. So this isn't the time where, they bring you inside and they tell you a good job. His mom's just watching him. She just keeps yelling, you don't lose till you quit trying, Sammy. So he's trying to figure it out. He's trying to drag in brute strength. It's not working. He's trying to push it from behind. It's not working. So finally he figures it out. He keeps getting drugged through the mud. So finally he takes that rope that's around the calf's neck and he wraps it around its leg. So it's only got 3 legs now, and then he's able to drag it to the corral super easy. So he figures it out, and he learns this super important life lesson that 500-pound calf versus a 10-year-old kid, he's not going to win all day long. But if you give up and you stop, you're done. You're dead in the water. But if you keep trying and you keep pushing, at some point you're going to find that solution. And that's what he did, and he never forgot that. And he said, his dad would tell him that, his mom would tell him that. That was just kind of their family mantra almost. You don't lose until you quit trying. And
that's awesome.
So that became kind of
a good
his
mantra to
life.
live by, huh?
Yeah. As long as you're alive and you're still in the fight, as long as you're pushing forward, you're not dead.
Yeah.
As soon as you give up, it's over. It doesn't matter if you could have won or could have lost.
It's accepting
but
defeat.
as long as you're still going, the fight's not over. Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what he grew up with. Like I said, they ended up moving to California. Unfortunately for him, moving around every 6 months isn't the greatest lifestyle or every year or anything like that. But he did, when he ended up in Northern California, he had a pretty good life up there. He had a driver's license when he was 13 years old.
Oh, shit. How's that possible?
So back in Indiana and Iowa, if you had a job, you could get a permit. So he used that.
I think my grandparents told me about that. If you're on the farm, I think it was much lower age.
Well, he had his driver's permit, so he's driving around. And then when they moved to California, he was still, a young kid.
Yeah.
And his dad went to the DMV and put his Midwest, Illinois or whatever license down, and they just gave him a new one. So he put his down too, and they gave him one too without any questions asked. So now he had a California driver's license. So he's a freshman driving to high school and
That's
everything
great.
like that. He got a little motorcycle and all that good stuff. 8th grade up in Stockton. This is the kind of a connection for us. Junior year, when in between junior and senior year, he got a job as a lumberjack up in Big Bear. So he was working up there in Big Bear. That's close to where we live. And stuff.
Really close.
Yeah. So,
we can actually see it from where we're sitting.
Exactly. So he was working up there. He had a good life. He also became what's called a powder monkey on the lumberjacking. They would blow up the stumps and everything. So he's training with explosives. He's just kind of got that lifestyle that you would never have today, I guess.
Yeah.
You're a young kid, but a lot of freedom moving around. After he finishes his lumberjacking, when he's going back to junior year, after junior year, going back to the senior year, his parents tell him, hey, we're moving back to Indiana. So he has to pick up again.
From California.
California. He's got to sell his motorcycle and his crappy car that he had bought, move on back to Indiana. But, it is what it is at that point.
Dang, going from California back to Indiana.
Well, he's been all over at this place. He
Probably just used to it at that point.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But he goes back to high school, finishes high school. While he's in high school, he gets a job at a bowling alley, being a cook, cleaning up and everything. And one day he's sitting there watching the news, and he doesn't know anything about Vietnam. He doesn't know what's going on over there, but he actually sees the Medal of Honor citation ceremony for Roger Donlin, who was the first Medal of Honor recipient of the Vietnam War. And he was struck by it. He's watching Donlin, and he's seeing how, rigid and straight he's standing. And he doesn't know a lot about it, but he knows what the Medal of Honor is because his family is in the military, and he's just thinking, God, I'd love to be like that one day, right? Yeah. So around the same time, some of his friends start getting drafted. Some of the other guys start saying, hey, I want to go. I want to enlist. He doesn't know much about the conflict, but he knows his country needs him, so he decides, I'm going to join the military. So him and his friends, they go down to join. He wants to join the Navy because his older brother had been in the Navy. Yeah. Then he's thinking about Marines because he wants to be on the ground and fighting, maybe airborne and all that. But they wait in the line for the Marines for like an hour, and the line doesn't move, so they just jump over and join the Army.
Just no preference, huh?
Yeah,
just whatever.
Much. Just, let's get it on. Let's go with it. So they do the...
what a trip. That fork in the road right there.
Yeah. Just something as small and flukish as that, potentially, right? And you go from working on the bowling alley, watching something on, and then just within months to a year, you're in it. You're in that same thing.
Wow.
So he has a little while before he has to ship out. So he spends a month working in the oil fields after graduation. As soon as that month's up, he ends up going in the Army in September of 1966, and he's shipped to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
How old is he, 18?
He's at 19 at this time, because he got a little held back in high school and stuff, held up. So he's 19 years old, goes to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which is still around. People still go there. When he got there, they were so overwhelmed with bodies getting geared up basically for Vietnam, they didn't have anywhere to put these guys. So for 12 days, they're in like this reception, and they had nowhere to sleep. So they're sleeping like outside, and they're getting like rained on and wet, and they're giving them like wet. They'll give them new blankets, and they get rained on the next day. So, of course, he gets pneumonia. When they get pneumonia, they bring him in. They're giving him all their shots. They give him a penicillin shot, and his throat closes up, and he falls on the floor and collapses. So that's how he found out he was allergic to penicillin.
Yeah.
From there, because of the overcrowding, they sent him to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and that's where he does his 8 weeks of basic training, which it was at the time. This is, again, that basic training you see in the movies, that boot camp, people just screaming at you constantly. People, you have, at the time, it's 8 weeks. They have 8 weeks to take these dumbass kids, some from the city, some from the country, and try to save their lives, essentially. Teach you these skills that are
the harder you are on them, the more you're looking at it like, this is going to save this kid's life.
If you go soft, you're not doing anybody any favors because they're going to get killed. They're not going to know what the hell to do. They're not going to figure it out.
And have these drill instructors been to Vietnam at this point?
Some of them would have. This is still a little bit early, so maybe not so much, but they're going to have that experience. You're going to have some guys that are career guys and some guys that have been in. You might even have some Korean War vets and stuff that are there. But this is where you want to listen big time.
Yeah.
So he's going through this, and he's writing letters home, and like, God, what did I get myself into?
Does he know what he's about to go into?
Well, he still doesn't have an idea of the big picture because this is 1966. Vietnam, we've been there a little while, but it's not the war that it is a couple years later. So you're getting news trickling in, and
people aren't dying like crazy yet?
People are dying, but it's still hard to understand why.
Yeah.
And if you looked at the maps in the schools at the times, you couldn't find Vietnam on a map. It was called French Indochina. So you're reading about Vietnam, and if you have an old encyclopedia and stuff, you don't even. So it's hard for these kids to understand. All they know is that there's a war. The government's telling them they need them, and they need to go.
What year did Vietnam start?
World War II ended in 1945. Vietnam was a French colony. It split up. The Viet Minh pushed out the French. We came in around 1954. We had advisors that say so. It was just a slow escalation.
So if he's there in 66, you said?
Yeah. So
when did it kick off? Like
for us, 1965, the Gulf of Tonkin and everything. Yeah. So this is very early. Okay. Yeah, we had troops over there prior to because again, Roger.
And then what year did the opinion of it shift?
It was a slow change, but 67 was real bad year, and then 68, the Tet Offensive, was the big major pushover, but there had already been a lot of protests.
So he still has a couple years before that.
Somewhat, yeah.
So he doesn't really quite grasp yet. He's going to be the people that find out what it is.
Exactly, yeah. He's going to be the people on the news. They're seeing it on the news, though, and they're hearing these reports, and their drill sergeants are, of course, telling them, you're going to die, look at these numbers, look at these people dying. So it is a reality.
Yeah.
And after he finishes his 8 weeks...
But when you're a kid... You're not putting those numbers,
and you're surrounded in this environment of everybody else is with you, and you're trying to be tough, and you all want to go, and you're gung ho. So I
just think when you're a kid, dude, I remember being that young. You just think about today. You're not even thinking about tomorrow. You know what I mean? So,
right.
I could imagine getting into that jungle and I mean, so he goes through basics. Sorry, I don't mean to keep
No,
interrupting.
you're good. Yeah, because it's on the same page. Like I said, we used to say stupid shit in basic training and stuff too. Like, oh, I don't care if I die, I'm just gonna die like a man. Like it's not reality to you until you actually get there.
And then once you get there, it's like, holy shit,
yeah,
this is
and
real.
it takes incidents to make you realize.
Yeah.
And, I mean, shit, if you dirt bike or something and you're driving around all the time and nothing happens, you're gonna get that God complex. And then when one of your buddies dies, you're gonna go. It's gonna take a step back. So it's kind of the same thing, but on a huger scale.
Yeah.
So he finishes Fort Jackson. He does his 8 weeks. Then he's sent off to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to learn to be a artilleryman, which becomes his MOS. He's artillery, which we were looking at some of the pictures. If you don't know what artillery is, it's like a big cannon. It's a big howitzer. It's the big guns behind the lines that are supporting.
It's a big barrel, and when you pull it,
yeah, so you pull the lanyard. So somebody will drop the shells in, or depending on the type of artillery you're using, and then you pull the lanyard on the back, and it's firing these rounds. He was on the 105 howitzers. Their max effective range, I believe, is 7 miles. So they're way back, and you traverse them up. The infantry or whoever needs it, they'll call for fire. They'll give you grid coordinates. That's why all these maps and stuff are very important. We're at this location, we'll give you a grid coordinate, and then fire for effect, and they'll fire, boom, and then the infantry guys there, the forward observers, will watch where the rounds are hitting, and then they'll say, bring it back 50 meters, or bring it more 50 meters, and they walk those rounds in. It's a curtain of steel to protect us, basically.
Wow. So imagine being those infantry guys on the front, man.
Yeah,
those artillery rounds are going right over your head, right?
Oh, yeah, and that's what you call like danger close and stuff, calling it on top of you.
So that first one's got to be out.
Yeah, so sometimes they'll do splash over, splash out. You call they can fire one round, or they can fire a certain type of round. You can see where it hits, and you can walk it in and stuff. It's a science.
There's a lot more to it. It's not just dumping around.
And these are young ass kids that are in charge of this too. Your forward observer is going to be an artillery guy with the infantryman. He might be 18, 19, 20. That's responsible for all these lives calling this in. The guys back on the guns, they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 20. It's all that's what's so crazy about a lot of the military that people don't understand. These big, huge decisions.
That's probably the trippiest part about doing this show is it's always the age.
Yeah, you always pick up on that.
Yeah, it freaks me out. Just when you have kids and stuff, and you go, damn. It's not too much older than our kids.
Yeah. I remember
making life and death decisions.
I was on leave in the Army, coming home. I think I was coming home from Iraq, and I was walking in the airport feeling all tough and cool in my uniform and shit. Yeah. And then one of the stewardesses walked by, and she turned to her friend, and she was real sad. And she's like, they're just so young. And I was like, in my mind, fuck you. And now looking back, I looked like I was 14 years old, and that's crazy to look at.
They're looking at you as a kid like, damn, I hope he's all right.
Right. So, so they, when he's in Fort Sill, he does his I think it's another 8 weeks of artillery training. While he's there, they give him like a wish list. Where do you want to be stationed after you get out of here? You can pick Germany, you can pick Japan. It doesn't necessarily going to mean you're going to get it, but he sees Vietnam and he goes, that's where the war is, that's where I'm going. So he picks Vietnam, and of course they send him to Vietnam in their graciousness. Yeah. He gets to go home for 30 days leave, say goodbye to mom and dad. His mom's crying and all that. His dad tells him pretty much, do your duty, just be a man. He's 20 years old at this time. Jeez. And he's getting ready to ship over into.
And Pops knows what's up.
Pops knows what's up, Grandpa and all them, but they're not overly sentimental. They just tell him, do your duty, don't let your brothers down. Probably over proud. There. Real proud. And that was what he talks about a lot, is just wanting to make his family proud and everything. Yeah. So we've talked about it in a couple of other episodes. They take that long flight over to Vietnam, Yeah. And, you're feeling a certain way. And then when he starts to land, they land in Tan Nut. This is March of 1967. As they're coming down, they're landing at 2 a.m., okay. So
he's going to Vietnam now in 67.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So as they're coming down on the runway, he's looking out the windows. You've been on this long flight, and then you're going, okay, what do we expect? Well, how's it going to be? He's looking out the window, and he starts seeing explosions already. There's lights flashing off, and there's, as they're landing, mortars are actually hitting the landing strip that they're landing on. So this is that reality check we talked about, right? This was all in theory before. This is enemy fire? This is enemy fire. Mortars are coming in on the landing strip. He's looking out on the horizon, and he's seeing explosions.
So they're probably trying to hit incoming
They're trying
planes.
to infiltrate the base, essentially.
Jeez.
This is kind of this life that he's seeing, and they land just like all the other Vietnam. Anybody I've ever heard that I've talked to from Vietnam will say the same thing. As soon as the door opens, the humidity just hits you like a punch in the face, and it smells. It smells like a sewer, or it smells like fish. Those are the two things you're going to hear, right? So they're quickly huddled onto buses, and then they take buses to a place called Long Binh. So again, he's realizing, God, it's 2 a.m. and I'm sweating my ass off from this heat. You know, I'm seeing mortars, I'm seeing explosions. Like, how the hell am I going to survive a year when I'm already terrified and I've only been here 5 minutes?
Everything's foreign.
Yeah, everything's foreign. You don't know anybody. He didn't go over with his unit. So these are all just other guys with different
just
orders. Some of them are
transplants?
going to be infantry. Some of them are going to be mechanics. So they're going to go all over too.
So he doesn't know anybody.
Doesn't know anybody.
Closely at this
No.
point.
And if you make friends with people on the plane, they're just going to go somewhere else anyways. It doesn't really matter.
What a
You're just kind of
lonely
waiting around
feeling.
for orders. And he's 20 years old at this time, you know, and there's people yelling at you, and you're running around here and there, hoping to keep track of your bag.
You're
hoping
tired.
You're miserable, tired. You miss your home. You're thinking, what did I get into? Some of these guys
Just having a buddy with you alone would be
Wouldn't that
the
be
best.
nice? Yeah, the Army's not going to do that for you,
Oof.
though. So Long Bin is this huge complex, though. So the Long Bin's where everybody comes in and out, all this ammo. They have this huge ammo cache. All the ammo that comes into the country is going to be there. So when he gets there, he realizes, like, okay, this isn't that bad. You know, on the news, what he's seen is like these jungles and, you know, these tropical wasteland kind of thing. And now here he's on this giant base, and they have like movie theaters and they have buses. And when I was in Iraq, and you leave Iraq and go to Kuwait, and you're like, what the hell? You guys live like this?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of the same thing. They have like salsa nights in Kuwait and stuff.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And this is how it is at Long Bin. There's creature comforts and stuff. So he's kind of thinking like, okay, this isn't bad, but this is just a temporary place. They're just waiting there to get their orders. On his third night, he's there. He's outside at night, and boom, huge explosion. He feels the air get sucked out of his lungs, essentially, you know, and he doesn't know what's happening, and there's artillery rounds hitting everywhere, and he realizes, oh my God, we're under attack again, and he's just thinking, like, how does anyone survive this country? Come to find out, this isn't a regular occurrence. It's enemy sappers. You remember what the sappers are?
Oh, I don't.
They're like the engineers, the combat engineers of the enemy. They'll sneak through and try to blow things up. They had snuck in and blown up the ammo dump there, right? So whole ammo dump's blown up. That's why all these rounds were flying off and everything like that. So the Army top brass realizes we're not going to let all these guys go. So he's waiting for his orders. He's supposed to be going to the DMZ. I think I'm losing my mic again.
Yeah.
But they actually
Try it.
test. All right. They actually give these guys orders. Hey, you guys are going to stay at Long Bin and guard Long Bin. So he's like, all right, cool. I got it pretty good here.
Yeah.
You know. So he ends up staying at Long Bin. They move him about, a little ways north of the actual base, and they're in their artillery position. So he gets assigned to his artillery unit, and they're on guard. They're on perimeter guard.
And they're
driving
protecting-
around. They're supposed to be protecting these base because they realize those sappers that made it through, we can't let that happen again.
Okay.
So he gets there. So he's doing pretty good. You know, he ends up spending 63 days there. There's about 50 guys in a tent, but they have TVs, they have creature comforts. On their days off, they can drive into the city, you know, mess around with the girls,
It's
drink
safe
their beer and stuff.
at that point?
It's not safe, but this is kind of the troops' lifestyle.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, on one incident, he said they would drive into town, and the hoodlums would basically rob them all the time, and it was just kind of a thing. They weren't allowed to have their guns, the Americans.
Yeah.
So they would just kind of pay them. He said on one particular incident, one of the guys in the cab objected and was like, "No, I'm not doing it." And they got in a fight, and the criminal shot and killed him. So he's in this
Holy
back of his
shit.
cab, and he's realizing, like, life is cheap over here. You know,
Damn.
this wasn't a combat death, but this is what it is. Life is cheap. But when they're not going into town, they're working 12-hour shifts. These long, boring shifts. Sitting in your perimeter, sitting in a foxhole, just watching the blackness, watching the dark. You know. So when nothing's going on, it's boring. When something's going on, they're doing fire missions. While he's there, though, during these 63 days, one incident, he's, you know, occasionally you'll take rounds from the jungle, occasionally you put rounds back, but on one particular night, he's sitting there and he's listening, and he hears kind of a rustling on the wire, and he thinks it might be an enemy, so he pops a flare. As soon as the flare goes up, he starts taking AK-47 fire. The enemy sees him pop the flare and starts lighting him up. So he grabs his M14 rifle, and he's able to put rounds, and he kills the enemy
What was the
soldier.
flare for? To light it up the area?
So what a flare does, lights the whole area up. So if it's pitch black and you pop a flare, it shoots up, and it's on a little parachute, and it'll linger for about 15 seconds, and the whole area is going to be lit almost like daylight. So the enemy doesn't want him to do that. So after he did that, the enemy sees him, shoots at him. Sammy Davis is the better man, so he puts rounds with his M14 rifle, and
Kills
then he's able to kill that enemy soldier. And like I said, even in Vietnam, most soldiers never even fired their rifles, or most soldiers never got kills, but he's already killed somebody, and he's only been there, you know, a month.
Damn. And that was probably a sapper then, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Somebody trying to infiltrate again.
Yeah.
So he goes and he checks the body, and one of the things he talks about, though, was getting close to that body, because most of the time...
Time out.
All right.
I'll cut this.
All right. So one of the things that he's talking about is, he's enemy shooting at him. He shoots back at the enemy. He's doing his job, but he's got to go check the body. So when he rolls him over, he realizes, this guy's my age. This is just someone doing their job like me. And it's kind of like he's been in country. He's already had these explosions. He's already killed somebody. He's just kind of like, this is crazy. Like, what am I doing here? Type deal. On another incident in April, he's kind of the same thing happens. He's hearing some rustling. He pops that flare again, and the flare malfunctions, and he gets third-degree burns on his hand, and it temporarily blinds him and stuff. So these are just things that are going on in country. They're dealing with snakes everywhere. There's cobras. There's all these poisonous snakes.
Really live?
Oh yeah, all over. This is Southeast
Asia. This is where
Asia.
they're from.
Yeah, he said at one time he was walking back to the ammo dump and he saw something on the ammo dump and he looked up and there was a black panther just sitting on the ammo dump, so he just kind of backed away and stuff.
Jeez, dude.
Yeah, because we're in there.
Do they have tigers there?
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, man.
There's stories of soldiers getting killed by tigers or soldiers shooting tigers. In one of my uniform collections, I have a door gunner, a picture of him holding a dead tiger, a soldier that they killed him with their M16s and stuff. Yeah, big old tiger.
That's something you don't see coming, man. When you see a tiger hunt, you're dead, bro.
Yeah, that'd be pretty terrifying. So, yeah, in addition to everything else you're scared of, you got to be dealing
Predators.
with that. So for these 63 days, though, that's kind of what he's dealing with. It's just super boredom, and then, boom. There's these exciting things. He starts volunteering to do these truck runs. So he's going back and forth. They're going on what they call thunder runs, where he would drive into town to get supplies because he's the cook. On those, they'd get ambushed regularly. There's a curve in the road, so every time he goes around that curve in the road, he's taking fire. He's having to deal with this kind of stuff. So he's getting a good bit of combat, and he actually ends up volunteering as a door gunner on a helicopter. So he's doing those flights. He tries to volunteer to stay, but for whatever reason, they don't. They don't let him stay there. So he finally gets orders to get to his unit. So he's going to go down to the Mekong Delta, which is South Vietnam, near Saigon. This is the jungle. This is those rice paddies.
This is what people are scared
wet
of.
country. So yeah, now he's going from Long Ban down to the 9th Infantry Division, where he's going to be. And immediately, same thing. You got to learn new friends. You got to learn new people. And he's seeing it, and he's going, man, I had it good up there. I didn't realize how good I had it, despite all the dangers and everything like that.
Probably wishing he could go back at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, I'd never considered the predators and all that crap, dude.
Yeah, it's just scary.
That's scary.
Well, like we talk about the bugs and the leeches, and now he's in the Mekong. That's what we're talking about. It's just
mosquitoes.
Wet. Mosquitoes, leeches. You're constantly wet. You're constantly miserable. You have sores. You have bugs. You have all this kind of stuff. What do mosquitoes bring? Mosquitoes bring malaria, so then you're having to take these nasty pills to make you sick.
Dude, I just had a client, and not to get too far off topic, but it's kind of in this area, said that he had mouth rot, and his grandfather had mouth rot
I've never
in
heard
Vietnam.
Of that. That's pretty gross.
Where it rotted his gums and teeth from the jungle.
No, I've never heard of that.
Right? I was
Sounds
like,
more like a tobacco issue,
maybe.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? But those are the kinds of things. It's just
he might have got it mixed up with foot.
maybe.
You know?
Yeah, jungle rot.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get a little sore on your side or something, and then you're in this damn humid environment. It's not going to heal. It's kind of like having a sore in your mouth.
Yeah.
That's your whole body over there.
Miserable, man. Humid.
It's so wet that their camp is set up on 50-gallon drums they buried in the ground to set it up because everything's just wet. You dig a hole and you're in the
it's
water.
full of water.
Yeah, and he's with the 110 guys on this little outpost, and they're all strangers. They've been there for a long time.
Crusty,
they know each other.
grumpy.
Yeah, crusty 19-year-olds. So, you know, they just come and go. So he kind of gets initiated and friends with everybody. And they're next to the infantry base. So they're supporting the infantry, 216th Infantry. Those guys have it even worse because he says he just sees them. They're like ghosts. They go out on patrols. They come back 4 days later just covered in mud, miserable, heads down. They don't talk to anybody, and they just kind of go back to their ghost bases. The infantry guys, when they're in the jungle, they call for help. So there's some times where day and night for hours, they're just pulling lanyards, boom, boom, boom. You'll see these pictures of Vietnam where there's just piles of shells. So all these crews are just manning their guns. The infantry needs help, so they're firing away for hours, just firing, boom, boom, boom. These
from
big
miles
howitzer
out.
shells, miles and miles away. Yeah, their maximum effective range, like I said, is 7 miles on the 105 howitzer. It's a big 2-ton gun. So if the infantry is going to be further out, they'll take all these artillery guns, they'll helicopter them out to a forward support base, and then they'll be there too. So, yeah.
I just don't understand how you would iron that in or sight that thing in without injuring.
Well, that's why you go off the grid
guys.
coordinates. That's why it's so important. That's why you don't have an infantry guy usually calling for fire. You have a forward or forward observer with them.
Because those guys on the land, you don't even know what they can't
they're not.
see
You
what
can't
they're shooting.
see anything exactly.
Right.
You're adjusting your coordinates. You're adjusting your traverse and elevation and all that kind of stuff. You're relying on everybody to do their job.
Was there a lot of friendly fire deaths with those?
No, I don't want to say a lot, but I mean friendly fire is always
gotta
a
be,
thing.
right?
And that's something that's just
That would scare me, man.
Yeah, that's
being those infantry guys out there
and being the artillery guys. You'd have to live with that if you knew about it after the fact. They're not always even gonna know
7
about
miles,
that.
dude. That's a long way.
Yep. And they were undermanned. He said usually it's supposed to be an 8-man crew, but usually they'd have like 4-man crews. Same thing though. They're either constantly bored or they're constantly busy. So here again, he's doing those thunder rounds. He takes a tour as the cook of the camp. So they're driving in supplies, get back, driving forward, driving back. So this is where you learn, just like in Iraq and Afghanistan, if you get hit, you just push forward.
Yeah.
So even just the minimal time he's been in country, he's already, like I said, he's been in a couple firefights. He's dealing with this. He's been
burned.
A door gunner. On one particular incident, they're driving back from the chow with the trucks. They get attacked. They have to get out of their trucks and run. One of the infantrymen up ahead gets shot in the chest, and this is a young kid. So Davis runs over to him, and he scoops him up, and the kid's crying for his mom, and then he dies in his arms, literally. Right? He doesn't even know this guy, but this guy is just dying in his arm. On another incident, they're pushing forward, and I don't know if they hit a mine or what, but all the trucks are stopped, so they're just kind of sitting there. And one of the Arvin soldiers, the South Vietnamese, our allies, they're kind of screwing around. So Davis is standing there talking next to his 2 friends, and one of those idiots accidentally, negligently discharges his weapon, and the backblast goes back and basically obliterates his friend. So he's standing there talking to this guy, and this guy just blows into pieces from the backblast of his weapon. So there's chunks of his buddy all over him and everything.
Oh my God.
And this again is just reminding him that
stupid little
death
accidents.
can happen at a minute. Death can happen at any time. I mean, death can happen anywhere, but in Vietnam, life is cheap. Life is cheap. It can be from an ambush. It can be from your friendly forces that are fucking idiots that are,
Well, that's what I was going to say. Say you get on a crew of guys that's doing a run or doing a truck somewhere, and those guys aren't, I'm sure there's guys that are the Jocko type that are like on their guns and everything's a serious thing.
Yeah, but you also have draftees and you have guys that don't want to be there.
What if you get on
disgruntled guys?
What if you get in a truck with a bunch of guys that are just messing around and not taking it serious? How scary would that be?
Right,
I'd rather be on the guy that's taking every freaking trip serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a good segue because, like you mentioned earlier, his sergeant, he has the gun section sergeant, Sergeant Gann. He's 27 years old. Davis always referred to him as this bitter old man, basically, because he's this old man because he's 27 years old. But their platoon leader, or platoon sergeant, or whatever the equivalent would be in the artillery, he's an asshole, basically, according to Davis, right? All the other platoons, when they're off. They're chilling, they're doing whatever. You're sleeping, you're playing cards, you're whatever. But them, Sergeant Gann is constantly making them drill. So they're wearing blindfolds and setting the fuses on these things. They're polishing every bullet in their M16.
That's the one video I saw of him. He said that they would, if there was downtime,
so everybody else is chilling,
and
they're polishing their bullets. And that's this asinine, like, military bullshit. You can just picture all the young guys going, you fuck this guy.
Yeah.
Right? He's just fucking with us. He's just being a dick. But what he didn't realize is you're doing things blindfolded because you might be blinded one day. You might be in the pitch black and dark. You might be having to reach around. So he's actually
polishing your ammo.
He's actually doing is giving them these skills so you can function on muscle memory. You don't, when you're terrified or you're wounded or you don't have all your faculties, you need to be able to do these things without thinking about them. And the reason they're polishing the bullets, this is the introduction to the M16. He had been using an M14 before that. They had to learn that. M16s keep jamming in Vietnam. One of the reasons is their weapons are filthy and their guns are filthy and their ammo's filthy in the magazine. So Gant's making them polish these fucking things, right? So you're never going to have that problem. If you
and
do,
you're
it's
learning
not
every
because of
aspect of your weapon.
and you're familiar with it.
My grandpa used to say that about cars. You want to know your vehicle, polish and wax your car. Right. You're going to know every nook and cranny of the thing.
See how it folds and how it turns.
Every little
everything
chip,
like
every
that.
little dent, everything.
Yep.
So
that's
and he's probably hating this guy.
They all hated this guy, and this is how it always is. The units that have the hardest leaders, they're gonna be the most bitter, but they're gonna be the best in combat, right?
Yes.
And again, in a country where these little mistakes can kill you, this is what you want, right? Because they're going, like I said, they do these fire support bases when they're out. They'll be in the field for days. These are 18-hour days. You're just eating sea rats. You're eating your little shitty food. Yeah, that sucks and it's miserable, but it's also detrimental on your mind. If lack of sleep is equivalent to being drunk at some point, right?
Yep.
So same
and then
thing.
take the lack of nutrition.
Right. Lack of sleep, lack of nutrition, loneliness, everything else you're doing. And then you're having to do these high stress things like set these timers. But they can do it because they've done it so many times and they have all these fuses. So it's going to pay off. And again, you also have the animals and everything else, but you have this invisible enemy that can shoot at you anytime. So it's deteriorating on your mind. You have this anxiety.
And you've
you have
seen
this
it.
hix stress. And you've seen it. It's a fact. It's not theoretical.
It's not
a fact.
a theory that some higher up is telling you about.
Right.
No, you've actually witnessed it.
Yeah. So Sammy Davis's action occurred on, it was at Fire Support Base Cudgel, or Fire Base Cudgel. He had just turned 21 on November 1st, I think is his birthday.
21 years old.
Yeah, so this was November 18th, 1967. They're taken out to support the infantry. So they're getting intelligence. There's a ton of enemy in this area. We don't know why. We don't know what's going on. Come to find out, all these units were pushing up towards the later Tet Offensive. But they don't know that at this time, right? All they know is there's a ton of enemy in the area, and the infantry's going to go out and ground and pound. So you guys, we're going to pick all their guns up. I think they brought 4 of them out instead of 6. They didn't have all their guns with them. Their 4 guns were airlifted out into this area that they called Cudgel. So they're all setting up just like normal. You know, they're out there in the boonies, supporting the 216th Infantry, which are the guys that are going to be out there. While they're setting up, you know, they have their guns out, they're doing their fire support missions. A helicopter comes in, it lands, and a major gets out. And he kind of gives them a speech, and he tells these guys, there's a 100% chance you're getting hit tonight, which you don't usually hear things like that.
Wow.
There's a 100% chance you're going to get hit tonight. They flying over in the helicopter, they saw the enemy below them. They're like, we just passed a ton of troops. You will get hit tonight. And then he gets in his helicopter and he leaves, basically.
Jeez,
right?
man.
So Davis and these other guys, even though they're hearing this, they're like, they've been hit before, especially because they're the artillery guys. They're on the perimeter. They're thinking, you know, we're going to get some mortars. We're going to get some rockets. We're going to get some bullets. Who gives a shit? We do this all the time. This is our job. Whatever. They didn't take it super, super seriously, right? He goes to bed, or he tries to go to bed. He's doing his thing. His guard shifts at 2 o'clock. So at 1:45, his buddy wakes him up, which is a dick move, by the way.
Yeah.
And says, like, hey, either relieve me or help me stay up because I'm falling asleep, right? So Davis is like, okay, I can't sleep anyway. So he starts making his coffee. You know, he's boiling his water and doing this and that. They're sitting there talking. And then he hears the slide of a mortar, which is a thump, go down. And he tells his buddy, he goes, I didn't know we had mortars. And he goes, we don't. That means the enemy was so close
That you heard it.
that they heard it, right?
Jeez.
So they heard the round going in. So the way their fire...
That's that.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly. They heard the thump before the shroom. So the way they set their base up was they had a canal. It's about 30 feet wide, or 30 yards wide, I'm sorry, like a little river that's about 10 yards deep, or 10 feet deep. So there's this, they have a water in front of them, and then they have their guns pointing. So on the other side of this canal, or this river, stream, whatever you want to call it, is thick jungle and foliage. Behind them is rice paddies. So that's good, right? Because
You can see it.
they have to cross the canal to get to us, and we have a way out in the back, essentially.
Yeah.
They're set up on the water. They had to put their spades of their howitzer on, try to get it on like dry little pieces of land and stuff because it's just on the water. But the good thing they have going for them is they have that water in between them and the enemy, so that natural barrier that's going to slow them down. But when he hears that mortar, you don't have a lot of time. So that mortar comes, boom, starts blowing. Boom, the whole fire base is getting attacked, right? And again, the infantry is used to getting attacked. These artillery guys, there should be somewhat in the rear. They're not.
So they're past the infantry guys.
They're behind the infantry guys.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yes, the enemy's past them. There's only 42 guys at this fire base. There's between 1,000 and 1,500 Vietnamese that are attacking them.
Where's the infantry guys?
The infantry guys have been chewed up.
Oh, so they overran them.
They're in a fight for their lives too. Everybody's fighting all over this area.
And then the enemy just passed them.
The enemy's passing them and actively engaging them because they're spread all over. The infantry guys were 7 miles away or whatever that may be, right?
Shit.
And they're all over. They're dotted. There's combat engineers and there's everything else. But they start hearing these mortars, boom, 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 and Sammy actually heard whistles and he hears shouting. He hears the Vietnamese shouting in English, basically, go kill the GI, which is god awful terrifying, right? As they start running,
the GI!
Right?
Oh,
and you're
imagine.
hearing machine guns, you're hearing rounds
Pitch
go off.
black, too.
Pitch black, except one of these mortars lands on their ammo dump. The ammo dump explodes. Boom! All their powder, all their shells, all their things they had set up is just exploded and it's all over the place. So it lights up the sky. It's terrifying. He starts crawling towards his foxhole, and a mortar hits and knocks him silly. Basically, he gets thrown into the hole. So he's already got that potential TBI. He's thrown back by the blast of a mortar. He's got a concussion for sure. His friends think he's dead. They're yelling, Davis, Davis. But he can't respond because he's knocked silly. So he kind of finally shakes it off and yells back, I'm okay. And then he starts hearing Sergeant Gant. And Sergeant Gant's yelling commands, this is the guy you want, right? Yeah. Everybody's panicking. Everybody's freaking. And Gant's up there and he's yelling, get that gun forward. Let's get these guys on. That voice of calm, that voice of control.
He's got it under control.
That guy that you look up to, right? Yeah. These are his troops. This is go time. These are the guys that have been trained by this man who's now leading them.
Now,
right?
when you're in the shit and you hear Gant charging out, is that like a calming thing?
Absolutely. One man with courage can make a majority, like we said it before, right? If everybody panics, what do they say? Lions can lead lambs, but lambs can't lead lions.
Yeah.
One man with courage can make that majority. Everybody wants to hug the ground and panic, but you have that lion that's standing there yelling, and it kind of snaps you back too. Let's get back in the fight. So Gant's yelling and he's screaming, and he's get those beehive rounds going. And like we were talked about, the 105 howitzer, when it's traversed up, you can fire 7 miles. But what they have are these beehive rounds. You traverse the gun all the way flat, and it's going to be a giant shotgun. These beehive rounds, there's about 1,000 of these little flechettes, as they're called. These little...
How big are they?
It's about the size of an eraser head on the
Like
front.
a BB.
They're about an inch long. No, it looks like an arrowhead almost.
Oh, okay.
Like a long
And there's
piece
1,000
of metal.
of
There's
them?
about 1,000 of them in there. So you fire it, boom, at point blank range, and it just shreds everybody in front of you like a giant shotgun.
Wow.
Yeah, so Gant's yelling at these guys, beehives, beehives, keep them going. So they're firing him. Davis runs up, even though he's been wounded, he's been knocked silly by that mortar round. He's loading them, and they're firing them. Boom, they're pulling on that lanyard. And it's shooting the enemy. The enemy's going down, but they just keep coming. So there's so many damn enemy, right? So they're firing. So you have this effective gun, and they're the closest gun to the water. So what does that do for the enemy? They're going to go after that gun.
Yeah,
So
target
everybody
position.
opens up on this gun. They fire an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade. Boom, it hits the actual artillery piece. It blows it back, destroys part of the recoil gear, destroys everything. It hits Sergeant Gant in the chest, and he disappears. He's basically gone. He's out of the fight. Davis gets blown back again. His ears are ringing. He has that traumatic brain injury. He's laying on the ground. He's already been close to a mortar, and now he's been literally hit with this RPG. The RPG hit the gun and then hit him.
And the second head wound is always way
he,
more.
He said he felt like he was underwater.
That's
like he was
well,
swimming.
they say when you get a first concussion, it's like a football player gets a concussion and they put him back in the game. The second one is 10 times as traumatic.
Gotcha.
Not that it wouldn't be
Well,
traumatic.
it absolutely
without
matters,
it, but
though.
Yeah.
And he's also got shrapnel from that RPG. The pieces of metal that hit him,
Oh,
they just rip his body apart, right?
How long does this piece take to reload? So you hit a beehive, boom.
So if you have your good crew going, it's in seconds. They
boom.
load because it's supposed to be the 4-man crew going.
Yeah.
If it's just you by yourself or something, you'd be running back and forth.
So they have time to attack that position.
Right.
But if you had your whole crew in gear, it'd be harder.
Yeah, it'd be a lot harder because they're well functioning. But they
Yeah.
were functioning because you got Gant orders. You got the guy.
Oh,
pulling the
Gant's on this
lanyard.
gun too.
Yeah, Gant's he's serving the gun basically.
Okay.
He's calling out all these guns, but now he's gone and everybody's gone. And Davis is on his back and his ears are ringing. And like I said, he feels like he's underwater. And he kind of looks up, and as he sees the enemy's overrunning his gun, the guys that have made it over there are pushing his gun and they're trying to turn it towards the Americans.
Oh shit.
The guns behind know what that means. So they have a standing order, do not let the gun be taken by the enemy. So this gun behind thinks everyone's dead, including Davis. So they fire a beehive directly at that gun. Boom, they pull the lanyard. So Sammy's on the ground, and he gets hit with that beehive round. He gets hit with those shrapnel. So as he's laying there, you talked about friendly fire.
And that's a 7-mile round, right?
Right.
Potentially.
Potentially. Well,
And you're at close range now.
yeah, you're at close range. So he takes 30 of these beehive rounds from his upper thigh all the way to his back. His flak vest saves his life. One of them actually goes into his spine and his fourth lumbar vertebrae. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so now he's got shrapnel
So
wounds.
this is the only jacket.
This is going to be that flak vest that's going to save his
saves
life.
him.
That's going to protect him. Yeah. One of those flechettes, careful, he's going to.
Yeah.
One of those flechettes perforated his kidney. His kidney's punctured. He's got rounds in his back. He's got rounds in his, and these are American rounds, right? He's got rounds all the way. He's got rounds in his spine. He's got shrapnel from the RPG. He's got that severe TBI. His ears are ringing, and he's stuck. He's alone, right? His guys behind him, they think he's dead. He rolls over on his back and he looks up and he's trying to process reality. He can't hear anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what's going on. And he's just watching the tracers
I
go.
remember this
Yeah. He's
quote.
watching the green from the Americans and the red, white, and blue from the enemy, and he thinks it's Christmas. He says it just reminded him of
He
Christmas.
said how beautiful it looked.
On his back in the jungle in Vietnam, and he's thinking, this is beautiful, right? But that's
And the way that he tells the story, he's like, I just looked up and it was just the most beautiful lights.
And see, that's the thing,
It's like,
that's where, with all those injuries and everything, that might be where you decide to die. That might be where you fall out. That might be where all those things.
But it's interesting, in the middle of a battle, in the middle of death, your mind is going, oh, it's Christmas.
Right.
Oh, you know what I mean? Like
And he's thinking back at home and everything.
I love how he gets those little moments.
And then he said his hearing just came back from 0 to 50. Boom. And then he's hearing machine guns. He's hearing people screaming. He's hearing machine guns. He's taking account of his own wounds, and he realizes how bad he's hurt. But he's hearing screaming. He's hearing machine guns. He's hearing guns going off. He knows he's alone. He knows he's hurt bad, and he's feeling like he's underwater. But he remembers his mom telling him, what you
You're
tell
not
him.
out of the fight.
Yeah, you don't lose till you quit
Until you
trying.
quit.
So he says, I'm not going to quit. So he gets his adrenaline. He gets up. despite his wounds, he starts checking his ammunition. He realizes I have 180 rounds of rifle ammunition on me, and I got my M16 rifle. He looks across the river and he sees these enemy waves coming. So he's in a forward position now, and they don't know he's there.
Yeah.
So he just starts laying down bodies with his rifle. He starts firing at everything that moves. It says it's like when you're a kid at the fair and you're seeing those little ducks.
Yeah.
He's just firing. That's a little hard to use those iron sights at night, but he's putting down good, effective fire, and he's firing at these waves and waves and waves of enemy. And other people are firing too. He's not the only one fighting. So the enemy's pushing forward. They're getting pulled back. They're going back and forth. He's firing until he has a couple rounds left, and then he wants to save those just in case, essentially, right? That wave enemy stops, and then he realizes there's an M60 machine gun over there. I got to get to it because me with a rifle versus me with a machine gun. I got to get to that gun.
His beehive gun is gone.
The artillery is pushed to the side, but he's going to have difficulty loading that himself. So he's just trying to do his one-man fight with his small arms, essentially.
Yeah.
So he kind of crawls, kind of hobbles, tries to get to that M60. He grabs the M60 and he starts firing again. That next wave of troops comes and he just starts laying down that fire on that M60, that high rate of fire, just pop, 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 pop. So all these artillery guys in the back whose guns are working are being kept alive because Sammy Davis is up front laying down small arms fire, laying down machine gun fire, putting down this effective rate of fire to stop these bodies. And they have the advantage here to this sense. If you're sprinting and you're running and you're firing and everything, you have an advantage. But as soon as they hit that water, they're going to slow down and their rifles are going to be above their heads and things. Boom. So we're taking back the initiative there. So he's smart. He's waiting for him to get into the water, and then he's putting down those rounds.
Waiting, so he's not exposing his position.
And he's not wasting his ammunition because he's fully prepared to die, but he's not going to quit, right? Because he's not done until he quits, and he doesn't have any quit in him. So he's waiting until they get in the water, and then he's firing. And as he's firing, he's looking at his machine gun belt, and he's realizing, Jesus Christ, they're not stopping, and I'm running out. He looks up at the howitzer. It's blown to hell. Like I said, the recoil frickin' mechanism's gone. The tires have been burned off. It's just completely destroyed. The shield's gone. But he knows that's the only chance I have. I got to get to that thing. If I can get to that gun, I can put effective rounds on the enemy. So he hobbles.
What's wrong with the M60 at this point?
He's almost out of ammunition.
Oh, okay.
So he picks it up. He starts to hobble. He throws the M60 into the water so the enemy can't get it, and he starts making his way to that gun. As he does, the enemy sees him, and they fire. Pop, pop, pop. He gets shot in the leg with the 7.62 AK-47 round.
Gosh.
So it slows him down a little bit, but it doesn't stop to him. He gets to the gun, and then he realizes the enemy's no longer charging directly at that gun. They're now coming in at a flank, so his gun's not in a good position. So this is supposed to be four-man. It's a 2-ton, 2,500, however big the howitzer is. He has to move this thing by himself, right? This should take 4 men or so to move. But he has to position this. He has to turn it. All the mechanisms are broke. So he just pushes it. He puts his face on it, and he pushes as hard as he can. Despite his 2 head injuries, despite his shrapnel, despite the AK round in his leg, he starts pushing with everything he has. Because he's on that wet ground, he's able to actually move it. He's pushing it with his face. As he's doing so, he starts seeing the gun getting eaten up. Like, what's going on? Why are there pieces of the gun falling off? A 50 cal gunner opened up on him, and the other side of the bank is just shooting at him with this machine gun. So he's able to turn the gun where he wants it. And now he's alone, right? He has to operate this gun alone. He runs back to get the ammo, and the ammo's all over. Because remember, the ammo dump had been blown up?
Yeah.
So the ammo, you have to set the fuse on the charge. You have to get these little bags. They're the powder bags. There's 7 of them, and you cut off, if you only want a 2 charge.
It's a process.
You get. 7 is the maximum you should put in the gun. All these are blown over, so the powder's just on the ground. It's just wet. The bags are low. So he just starts scooping it up, and he kind of estimates however many he has. Like I said, 7 bags is the max. He doesn't realize he grabs the equivalent of 20 bags.
Shit.
And he stuffs it into the gun, and he realizes, I'm going to die, but I'm going to try this. I'm going to get I'm going to get that 50 cal gunner, and I'm going to get this wave as they come across. So he manhandles, he sets the timer on the fuse. And I'm probably saying all this wrong, artillery guys. Sorry, I'm doing my best. Yeah, he gets all the powder in there. He gets behind the gun, and he waits for that enemy wave to get right in the middle of the water where they're screwed, right? So he gets behind on that lanyard, and he pulls it, and nothing happens. And he says his heart just sank because that was his last chance.
Yeah.
And then after a hesitation, boom, the gun blew up because it's 3 times the charge on a broken gun with no recoil mechanism.
Yeah.
So he said the guys behind him started cheering. They thought he rigged up some kind of giant flamethrower because the gun flew up into the air, and it was spewing fire. It destroyed this enemy in front. It spewed fire up, and it came back, boom, lifted up off the ground and came back. Unfortunately, when it landed on him, right?
Oh,
so
geez.
He's now been crushed by the gun. It broke his back. It separated his ribs from his sternum.
Oh, that's one of the most painful injuries you can ever have.
In addition to all his other injuries,
Yes.
right? Separated his ribs from his sternum physically. So now he's, like you just said, it's one of the
He
the
just got in a
worst
car
pains you can
accident.
have. Yeah, exactly. But the enemy's still coming. So he was able to push that group back, but now he's laying there and he can't breathe. So again, his mind flashes back. He remembers when he was a kid and he fell out of a tree onto the bank and his brothers were over top of him and they said, just breathe shallow and get yourself together, right?
Yeah.
So he starts doing that. He's remembering his brothers. He starts breathing, taking deep, little shallow breaths, and then he realizes again, I'm not done yet. So he gets back up and he realizes that if I can just get one more round out of this gun, if I can get one more beehive round out of this gun, I can slow that enemy down. I can save my brothers behind me. So he does. He goes and he scoops some more. He uses a little less powder this time. With those ribs separated, he's shoving it in the gun, and boom, he fires it again.
Imagine the rib injury, dude.
I think the rib's the worst.
Yes.
Of all the
because
TBI.
every move.
Exactly.
And it's separated, dude.
The TBI, the gunshot wound, the shrapnel and everything, but that excruciating
that cartilage
breathing.
that attaches them, fighters will get it like a separated in the cartilage, and they'll be out for a year.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can imagine.
Right, and he's in this fight still. So like he said, he one more rounded it until he ran out of rounds. He just kept firing. Boom, or beehive round. Boom, beehive round. Boom, beehive round. He's able to put them on. He finally runs out of beehive, so he goes into the white phosphorus and the high explosives, and then he realizes he's down to his last round, so he gets his last round, and it's actually a propaganda leaflet. It's like papers and stuff. So he just figures, well, here we go, and he fires it, boom, and at close range, it's actually still effective in putting down some of the enemy. By then, the waves have stopped, so he's kind of taking into account again everything. He's looking at his injuries. He's realizing what's going on. He's starting to, get that adrenaline dump and realize, oh, man, I'm fucking bad. Everything's starting to hurt. So as he's doing this, he hears someone, right? He looks across the canal and he hears screaming and he hears this guy panicking, yelling, don't shoot, I'm a GI. Don't shoot, I'm a GI. And his first thought was, oh my God, I've been shooting over there. Like I might be killing my brothers, right?
Yeah.
And then he looks up and his second thought is this is a trick by the enemy. They're speaking English to try to fuck with us, right? So he looks across and he sees this infantryman by the name of Holloway. He's a black man. He's on the other side of the bench and he's waving his boonie and he's yelling, help, help, basically, right? And Holloway's shot in the back and he's got shrapnel in his head. And again, the way Sammy always remembers his past, even though this is, a soldier he's never met, even though he's black and he's white, even all these things, he remembers his childhood and he remembers his parents, and they'd always tell him, don't leave your brother. Don't you dare leave your brother.
Yeah.
And in his head, he's thinking, someone needs to go get him. And then he realizes, I'm that someone, right? So Sammy was a strong swimmer. Remember his kids?
He's on the other side?
He's on the other side of the bank. He's 30 yards away. Sammy's a strong swimmer. He was on the swimming team in high school, but in high school, he didn't have his ribs separated from his sternum. He didn't have a bullet wound in his leg.
Multiple concussions.
He didn't have multiple concussions. He didn't have shrapnel in his body from RPG and mortar. He can't swim. He will not make it across the river, but he's smart, right? He knows he's not quitting. He remembers they have air mattresses that they've been sleeping on because they're the artillery guys.
Yeah.
So he crawls back and he finds an air mattress and it's shot full of holes. So he ties it off, basically. He finds the part that's not shot up. He ties it off and he gets into the water and he starts paddling across. This is 30 yards. It's not that far.
Yeah.
It took him 5 minutes to get across, 5 solid minutes to paddle his way across.
Agonizing, too.
To try to go get this guy because that's his brother. That's all he can think is that's my brother and I need to get to him. When he gets there, he gets to the other side of the bank and there's just dead bodies everywhere. Americans, Vietnamese, just mutilation. There's, people that have been ripped apart by his artillery rounds, machine gun rounds. It's just a hellscape of bodies. So he goes to find Holloway in his foxhole, and when he does, it's not just Holloway. It's actually 3 GIs are in the foxhole. Holloway, like I said, he's been shot in the back, and he's got shrapnel on his head. He's bad wounded.
Is this from our...
No, this is from the enemy.
Oh,
They've fallen back. They're trying to get to help.
Oh, shit. So they're coming back into beehive rounds.
Correct.
Damn.
Then the second guy is missing part of his leg. They had to save his life with a tourniquet, so he's barely hanging on. And then the third guy's got a bullet through his head and his back's open, or his chest is open, right, from the around. And they're telling him, he's dead. And Davis says, okay, but I'm not going to leave him. Like, even though he's dead, I know what they're going to do to his body. I'm not going to leave him. So despite all of Davis's injuries, he picks up the dead man, puts his arms around his shoulder, and he takes the other two so they can hobble together. He loosens. Holloway still has I hope I remember his name right, Gwendol Holloway. His still has a M16 rifle with ammunition, so he puts the sling around his head, Davis, so he can hold it, and they all kind of assist each other to the water. As they're going, another wave of enemy starts coming, so they all lay down and act like they're dead, which isn't hard to do because one's missing a fucking leg, one's bleeding out of the head, one's bleeding out of the back, and Davis is just freaking hamburger meat.
Yeah.
So he lays down with that rifle, and the enemy just kind of run by him, right? They're a distance away. A couple of the enemy look, and Sammy kills him with his rifle. He's able to protect his guys. Yeah. As soon as they stop, he realizes, I can't get all these guys across, so I'm going to take the dead man first, basically. You guys stay here. So he puts him up on that air mattress, and he kind of swims his way all the way back across the water. As soon as he gets over there, 2 more Americans grab the body and they pull him off. He paddles his way back across. Despite all these injuries, despite all his wounds, he paddles his way back across and he gets the other 2. They all 3 grab a hold of the mattress, and these guys are a little more mobile, and they're able to push across the river. When he gets to the other side, the Americans pull those other 2 guys off, and he just kind of collapses in the water again, that adrenaline dump, and he realizes, I can't go on anymore. He kind of starts having these weird visions and things, and then he realizes, I got to keep going. The fight's still going on.
Yeah.
So he gets up, and he starts running towards the guns. He realizes, I'm no good anymore, but I can go help those guys set fuses. So he starts crawling over there. When he does, he comes across Sergeant Gant. And Sergeant Gant's bleeding from a sucking chest wound. What
is that?
It's when your lung is perforated. So every time you're taking in the air, it's basically going into your lung. So every time you're trying to breathe,
it's sucking in.
It's sucking in. Yeah,
so
it'll bubble up.
It?
Yeah, the idea is you take a piece of plastic or a chest seal, and you're gonna basically make an artificial lung. So you got to check the entry and the exit, because there's usually going to be the exit. You're going to seal 3 sides, wait for him to exhale, put it on, and then breathe it in. But it's potentially fatal. You're going to get a lot of things. So Gant's. It's from the RPG, so it's pretty bad. So he sees Gant, and he kind of snaps back into private mode, and he's holding Gant's hand, and he's yelling, "What do I do, Sergeant? What do I do?" And Gant can't even speak, right? So Davis goes back to his training, because Gant's the one that taught him how to do that sucking chest seal. So he runs back, he cuts a piece of poncho, he puts it on Gant, and he's able to stop that bleeding, basically, right? Then he gets back in the fight again. He runs to the guns, and he starts setting those timers. He starts setting those fuses and handing them, doing what he can just to kind of stay in this fight, just to do anything. At around 8 o'clock in the morning, when the sun's coming up, the enemy filtered away and the fight was over. So they'd been fighting for 6 hours. Jeez. At the end of the 6 hours, only 12 people out of the original 42 were still standing, were still able to move. And that's including him. And so when we say standing,
you're talking dead.
We're dead on their feet. Well, they're not all dead. Some of them are dead and just severely wounded. They're out of the fight. So the medevacs start coming in. They start getting helicoptered out of there. Davis is considering himself still mobile, so he's helping load the dead and wounded. One guy's femoral arteries, spewing like a water hose. Davis takes some dental floss and ties it off to try to save his life. The dead man that he ferried across the river, they put him with the dead, and then he starts moving. So a good medic realized, hey, I think this guy's alive, even though he had a bullet that went through his head. Davis actually put part of his brain back in his head when he was carrying him across. They were able to save that man's life, and he lived for many years, and Davis ended up holding his grandkid later in life. So we always talk about those generations. This is a literal example of that. Everybody had given up on this guy for dead, but because of Davis's actions as a 20-year-old kid, this guy was able to go home, get married, have a family. He had health problems, obviously, have children and have grandchildren, right? Just as a direct result, when it would have been reasonable to leave him on the other side of the bank.
Not only reasonable, probably
smarter. Leave him on that other side of the bank. He would have been dead, and nobody would have been
You would think at that point with broken ribs, concussions, you're looking for any excuse to not swim.
Right.
So anything that looks, oh, he might die, cool, I'm out.
And that's that triage too, right? You have to treat the people who can survive.
Yeah,
quick.
smarter.
You don't treat the worst first. You treat the best first, because they can get back in the fight. At the end of this 6-hour fight, again, there's enemy dead everywhere. There's American dead. The engineers and infantry are all spread out too. It's not just this artillery guys. Before the fight, there was thick jungle. After the fight, it was just a moonscape, because they had blown so many rounds through and they had fired so many rounds and everything. Davis stayed on his feet until he's walking around like a zombie, and then he says, I got to go to the bathroom. So he takes his pants off and he looks down at his legs, and he just passed out when he saw the extent of his wounds. He ended up waking up in a hospital and being treated in Vietnam. Come to find out, like I said, we went over the extent of his injuries quite a bit. That round that hit him in the lumbar was actually what was keeping him going, because it had made his legs numb. He was still able to move them, but it was able to stop a lot of the pain.
Like an epidural.
Below his leg, exactly.
Wow.
So below his leg, he was able to still function, but he wasn't feeling a lot of the pain. So now that he's in the hospital, though, they started removing those beehive rounds, and as soon as they took it out and his spine decompressed, he started feeling all that pain in his legs and everything, right? So they moved him. They sent him to Japan. He actually had a kidney infection because it perforated his kidney, and now he's in this dirty, filthy water swimming back and forth. So he's got a hole in his kidney, so he's going back. So not only does he have those obvious physical injuries, but he's getting these 105 temperature fevers or 105 degree fevers. He's allergic to penicillin, so he's still suffering in the hospital. So for weeks and weeks, he's just kind of like in and out of consciousness, fuzzy. They sent him to Japan for better treatment because he's so bad, and then the doctors tell him, you're out of the Army, you're going home, you're going to be medically retired, right? And instead of this being a good thing, because he still got 3 months on his tour in Vietnam, he still got 18 months in the Army, he feels guilty, and he feels like, I don't want to abandon my friends that were over there. So he requests to go back to Vietnam, and they're like, no, you're crazy. So he starts throwing a fit and going all crazy, and he's yelling, call General Westmoreland, who was the commander of all troops in Vietnam. Call General Westmoreland, call General Westmoreland. He'll let me stay, because he had a previous encounter with him. So they're like, whatever, you're crazy. So, he drifts in and out of consciousness. Then while he's in the hospital, they go, Davis, General Westmoreland's on the phone. So they carry his stretcher in, and he gets on the phone, and he talks to him, and General Westmoreland gave him permission to go back to Vietnam, essentially. So they flew him back to a hospital in Saigon. Come to find out later, Westmoreland had literally just been reviewing the testimonies for his citation for his Medal of Honor when he got word that there's this crazy guy in a hospital named Davis that wants to come back to Vietnam. And Westmoreland's quote, I wrote it down, was he said, I would have given you the world, and all you wanted was to go back to your unit in Vietnam, which is kind of cool, like he's sitting there with like a tear in his eye, because Westmoreland's I believe World War II and Korea vet, and in Vietnam, and he's reading how powerful this is, and then hey, there's a phone call, it's this fucking crazy kid, and he wants to go back to Vietnam. So he did. He went back to Vietnam. He returned to his unit.
And then not only that, dude, think about what that guy's hearing constantly about all the negativity, the death.
Well, if you know anything about Westmoreland,
people trying to get out of the military, I'm sure. People trying to, and then you got this crazy kid who just committed one of the coolest actions ever, or courageous, not cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's badass. And then, you're gonna make that dude give him whatever the hell he wants.
So they did. He went back to his unit on crutches with IV bottles.
Awesome.
He had to. It took him a long time to recover. He ended up they kind of being a cook again, but he was there during the Tet Offensive, which, if you know anything about Vietnam history, they actually got, again, thrown in your trucks, go to Saigon and defend the city. So he was in another major engagement. And then he finally finished his tour and went home. Still had 18 months left in the Army. He was at Fort Hood. He became an instructor, and then he became a public speaker. So him and Westmoreland would go on actual speaking tours.
Right
so
on.
he had to go around the country. He hated it because there was a lot of hippies and protesters and stuff he was having to deal with. But he met and married his wife, Peggy Jo. I think they stayed married for over 30 years. He had several, I think 2 sons and a daughter, real good life. His wife passed away, and he ended up remarrying to another wonderful woman who he's still with to this day, because, like we said, he's still alive. Yeah. One of the big things, though, that I didn't mention that's, I don't know if you remember this, his Medal of Honor ceremony. So he was presented the Medal of Honor by LBJ.
Yeah.
Do you remember what was significant about that? So they actually, if you have ever seen the movie Forrest Gump, they use his video footage of his Medal of Honor citation.
So Sammy Davis meeting the president is
Forrest Gump. They superimposed Tom Hanks' face over Sammy Davis. So sometimes they'll call him the real Forrest Gump, because when he's parts of his citation are similar to
and how he carried guys out
and not leaving anybody and everything like that.
Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of the Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant Sammy L. Davis, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Sergeant Sammy L. Davis distinguished himself on November 18, 1967.
But yeah, he's the real Forrest Gump, because that's Forrest
and then the Bubba death is similar to his sergeant's death.
So Sergeant Gant actually survived.
He did.
Yeah, Sergeant Gant.
When I saw that video, I thought he died there.
It makes it sound like that. He come to find out years and years later, he was at a reunion or something, and Sergeant Gant came walking up to him, and that was one of the funny things too. Is he said he remembered Sergeant Gant being this big giant of a man, and here was this little man walking up to him, because he didn't realize that he was small.
Oh, that's great.
Gant survived. The dead man on the raft survived. Gwendolyn Holloway survived. All those dudes survived. Unfortunately, the gentleman with the severed leg survived, but he ended up committing suicide back at home. But yeah, he was able to...
The great part about Gant's story, guys, if you look up the Sammy Davis video that we're talking about, it's one of the funniest quotes.
We could put a link on there.
Yeah, well, hopefully we could link it up. I don't want to get in trouble for copyright or anything, but maybe we'll just throw it in there and take the chance. But he's talking about when he's there with his sergeant wounded, and he's looking at him like, what does he say? Something like, what do I do? What do I do? And he said, this old crusty war veteran, man, or whatever he said. He said, this old crusty grump, we couldn't stand
bitter
him.
Old man. Yeah.
Bitter old man. And he goes, he was 27 or 26 years old.
Yeah.
But the way that Sammy says it, or, it puts into perspective, like, the age thing, you know, because the crusty old veteran was 27 years old.
Yeah.
Man. And and you can just only imagine. And the way he's telling the story leading up to it, you're picturing a gray-headed veteran, crutchy old man, and it's a 27-year-old kid.
27-year-old in the Army's got 9 years of experience potentially, and that's a hell of a lot for that. So yeah,
man, you want to finish with the citation?
I didn't know if we had time there.
Yeah,
but
let's
we'll
do
go
it.
ahead and read the citation. All right. On 18 November 1967, Sergeant Davis distinguished himself during the early morning hours while serving as a cannoneer with Battery C at a remote fire support base. At approximately 0200 hours, the fire support base was under heavy enemy mortar attack. Simultaneously, an estimated reinforced Viet Cong battalion launched a fierce ground assault upon the fire support base. The attacking enemy drove within 25 meters of its friendly position. Only a river separated the Viet Cong from the fire support base. Detecting a nearby enemy position, Davis seized a machine gun and provided covering fire for his gun crew as they attempted to bring direct artillery fire on the enemy. Despite his efforts, an enemy recoilless rifle round scored a direct hit on the artillery piece. The resultant blast hurled the gun crew from the weapon and blew Sergeant Davis into a foxhole. He struggled to his feet and returned to the howitzer, which was burning furiously. Ignoring repeated warnings to seek cover, Davis rammed a shell into the gun. Disregarding a withering hail of enemy fire directed at his position, he aimed and fired the howitzer, which rolled backwards, knocking Sergeant Davis violently to the ground. Undaunted, he returned to the weapon to fire again when an enemy mortar round exploded within 20 meters of his position, injuring him painfully. Nevertheless, Sergeant Davis loaded the artillery piece, aimed, and fired. Again, he was knocked down by the recoil. In complete disregard for his safety, Davis loaded and fired 3 more shells into the enemy. Disregarding his extensive injuries and his inability to swim, Davis picked up an air mattress and struck out across the deep river to rescue 3 wounded comrades on the far side. Upon reaching the 3 wounded men, he stood upright and fired into the dense vegetation to prevent the Viet Cong from advancing. While the most seriously wounded soldier was helped across the river, Sergeant Davis protected the 2 remaining casualties until he could pull them across the river to the fire support base. Though suffering from painful wounds, he refused medical attention, joining another howitzer crew which fired at the Viet Cong force until it broke contact and fled. Sergeant Davis' extraordinary heroism and risk of his life are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself and the United States Army.
Awesome, man. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's got to watch his videos, man.
Plenty of content from him on YouTube, so make sure you guys check that out, too.
Yeah, check it out.
Get the story from the horse's mouth, because it's a better...
And he just seems like an awesome guy, too.
Awesome guy.
Doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, like everybody's dad, just telling a great story. And yeah, I'm glad we got to do this one.
Cool, man.
The other one that I want to do eventually is, Navy SEAL.
Mike Thornton. And,
he's great, too.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
You think it's disrespect. I don't think they take it as disrespect.
Nah, it's just if they're alive, they can tell their own story better than I can. So I'm trying to,
Sometimes you guys are all too humble, dude, to really tell it. You know what I mean? All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks,
we appreciate it.
Have a good one.
It sounds silly, perhaps, to say that I went to war and found out about love. What real love is? I didn't go to war to kill people. I went to war because I loved my daddy. I wanted him to be proud of me. I went to war because I loved my grandpas and I loved my country. And when I got over there, the reason why we fought so hard was because we discovered we loved each other, that we were all we had. And they became brothers. We became brothers. And that's lasted up, it's been 36 years, and those men that I fought with are still my brothers. So I learned about what real love is.